What's up, everybody? It's your boy. Once upon a time, long, long ago, in a realm called the Midwestern United States, specifically the states of Minnesota and Wisconsin, a group of friends gathered together to forever alter the history of gaming. It wasn't their intent to do so. They were merely reading tales about worlds of magic, monsters, and adventure. They wanted to play in those worlds rather than observe them. That they went they went on to invent Dungeons and Dragons, thereby ignite a revolution in gaming that continues to this day. Speaks to two things. First, it speaks to the integrity. I'm just gonna say integrity. Integrity and genius in figuring out games that were the perfect way to play and explore worlds that could not otherwise exist. Almost every modern game, whether played on a digital device or a tabletop, owes some debt to D&D. Second, it is a testament to the inherent appeal of the game they created. Dungeons & Dragons sparked a thriving global phenomenon. It is the first role-playing game, and remains one of the best of its breed. To play D&D, and to play it well, you don't need to read all the rules, memorize every detail of the game, or master the fine art of rolling funny-looking dice. None of those things have been any bearing on what's best about the game. What you need are two things. The first being friends with whom you can share the game. Playing games with your friends is a lot of fun, but D&D does something more than entertain. Playing D&D is an exercise in collaborative creation. You and your friends will create epic stories filled with tension and memorable drama. You create silly in-jokes that'll make you laugh years later. The dice will be cruel to you, but you will soldier on. The collective creativity will build stories that you will tell again and again, ranging from the utterly absurd to the stuff of a legend. If you don't have friends, if you don't have friends interested in playing, don't worry. There's a special alchemy that takes place around a D&D table that nothing else can match. Play the game with someone enough, and the two of you are likely to end up friends. It's a cool side effect of the game. You are the next gaming group is closest to the nearest game store, online forum, or gaming convention. The second thing you need is a lively imagination, or more importantly, the willingness to use whatever imagination you have. You don't need to be a master, or a storyteller, or a brilliant artist. You just need to aspire to create, to have the courage of someone who is telling to build something and share it with others. Luckily, just as D&D can strengthen your friendships, it can help build in you the confidence to create and share. D&D is a game that teaches you to look for the clever solution, share the sudden idea that can overcome a problem, or push yourself to imagine what could be, rather than to simply accept what it is. The first characters and adventurers you create will probably be a collection of cliches. That's true of everyone, from the greatest dungeon masters in history on down. Accept this reality and move on to create the better second character or adventure, which will be better. You create the second character adventure, and the third, which will be better still. Repeat that over the course of time, and soon you'll be able to create anything, from a character's background story to an epic world of fantasy adventure. Once you have that skill, it's yours forever. Countless writers, artists, and other creators trace their beginnings to a few pages of D&D notes and a handful of dice and a kitchen table. Above all else, D&D is yours. Oh, God. Above all else, D&D is yours. The friendships you make around the table will be unique to you. The adventures you embark on, the characters you create, and the memories you take, these will be yours. The friendships you make around the table will be unique to you. The adventures you embark on, the characters you create, the memories you make, these will be yours. D&D is your personal corner of the universe, a place where you have free reign to do as you wish. Go forth now, and read the rules of the game and the story of its worlds, but remember that you are the one that brings them to life. They are nothing without the spark of life you give them. Introduction. The Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game is about storytelling in worlds of swords and sorcery. It shares elements with childhood games of make-believe. Like those games, D&D is driven by imagination. It's about picturing the towering castle beneath the stormy night sky and imagining how a fantasy adventure might react to the challenges that the scene presents. Dungeon Master, DM. After passing through craggy peaks, the road takes you to sudden east, and Castle Ravenloft towers before you. Crumbling towers of stone keep a silent watch over the approach. They look like abandoned guardhouses. Beyond these, a wide chasm gapes, disappearing into the deep fog below. A lower drawbridge spans the chasm, leading to an arched entrance to the castle courtyard. The chains of the drawbridge creak in the wind, their rusty and iron staining with the weight. From atop of the high, strong walls, the stone gargoyles stare at you from hollow sockets and grin hideously. A rotting wooden portcullis, green with growth, hangs in the entry tunnel. Beyond this, the main doors of the castle of Ravenloft stand open, a rich, warm light spilling into the courtyard. Philip, playing Gareth. I want to look at the gargoyles. I have a feeling that they're not just statues. Amy, playing Reba. The drawbridge looks precarious. I want to see how sturdy it is. Can we get? Do I think we can cross it, or is it going to collapse under our weight? Unlike a game of make-believe, D&D gives structure to the stories, a way of determining the consequences of the adventurer's action. Players roll dice to resolve whether their attacks hit or miss. I guess they never miss, huh? Or whether their adventures can scale a cliff, roll away from the strike of a magical lightning bolt, or pull off some other dangerous task. Anything is possible, but the dice make some outcomes more probable than others. Dungeon Master, DM. Okay, one at a time, Philip. You're looking at the gargoyles? Yeah. Is there any hint that they might be creatures and not decorations? DM, make an intelligence check. Philip, does my investigation skill apply? DM, sure. Philip, rolling a d20. Ugh, 7. DM, they look like decorations to you. And Amy, Reva is checking out the drawbridge? In the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game, each character creates an adventurer, also called a character, and teams up with other adventurers, played by friends. Working together, the group might explore a dark dungeon, a ruined city, a haunted castle, a lost temple deep in a jungle, or a lava-filled cavern beneath this mysterious mountain. The adventurers can solve puzzles, talk with other characters, battle fantastic monsters, and discover fabulous magic items and other treasure. One player, however, takes on the role of Dungeon Master, DM, the game's lead storyteller and reference. The DM creates adventures for the characters, who navigate its hazards and decide which paths to explore. The DM might describe the entrance to Castle Ravenloft, and the players decide what they want their adventurers to do. Will they walk across the dangerously weathered drawbridge, tie themselves together with rope to minimize the chance that someone will fall if the drawbridge gives way, or cast a spell to carry them over the chasm? Then, the DM determines with the results of the adventurers' actions and narrates what they experience, because the DM can improvise and to react to anything the players attempt. D&D is infinitely flexible, and each adventure can be exciting and unexpected. The game has no real end. When one story and quest wraps up, another one can begin, creating an ongoing story called a campaign. Many people who play the game keep their campaigns going on for months or years, meeting with their friends every week or so to pick up the story where they left off. The adventurers grow up in the story where they left off. The characters grow in might as the campaign continues. Each monster defeated, each adventure completed, and each treasure recovered not only adds to continuing story, but also earns the adventurers new capabilities. This increase in power is reflected by an adventurer's level. There's no winning and losing in the Dungeons & Dragons game, at least not the way those terms are usually understood. Together, the DM and the players create an exciting story of bold adventurers who confront deadly perils. Sometimes an adventure might come to a grisly end, torn apart by ferocious monsters or done in by a nefarious villain. Even so, the other adventurers can search for powerful magic to revive their fallen comrade, or the player might choose to create a new character to carry on. The group might fail to complete an adventure successfully, but if everyone had a good time and created a memorable story, they all win. Worlds of Adventure. There are many worlds of the Dungeons and Dragons game, and the many worlds of the Dungeons and Dragons game are places of magic and monsters, brave warriors, and spectacular adventures. They begin with a foundation of medieval fantasy, and then add the creatures, places, and magic that would make these worlds unique. The worlds of Dungeons and Dragons game exist within a vast cosmos called the multiverse, connected in a strange and mysterious way to one another in other planes of existence, such as the elemental plane of fire and the infinite depths of the abyss. Within, okay, we'll be here for a while. Within this multiverse are an endless variety of worlds. Many of them have been published as official settings for the D&D game. Legends of the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, Greyhawk, Dark Sun, Mysteria, and Erebon settings are woven together in the fabric of the multiverse. Alongside these worlds are hundreds and thousands more, created by generations of D&D players for their own games. And amid all the richness of the multiverse, you might create a world of your own. All these worlds share characteristics, but each world is set apart by its own history and cultures, distinctive monsters and races, fantastic geography, ancient dungeons, and scheming villains. Some races have unusual traits in different worlds. The halflings of the Dark Sun setting, for example, are jungle-dwelling cannibals, and elves are short nomads. Some worlds feature races unknown in other settings, such as Erebon's Warforged, soldiers created and imbued with life to fight in the last war. Some worlds are dominated by one great story, like the War of Alliance that creates a central role in the Dragonlance setting, but they're all D&D worlds, and you can use the rules in this book to create a character and play in any one of them. Your DM might set the campaign on one of these worlds or on one that he or she created. Because there is so much diversity among the worlds of D&D, you should check with your DM about any house rules that will affect your play of the game. Ultimately, the Dungeon Master is the authority on the campaign and its setting, even if the setting is a published world. Using this book. The Player's Handbook is divided into 3 parts. Part 1, chapters 1 to 6, is about creating a character, providing rules and the guidance you need to make the character you'll play in the game. Includes information on the various races, classes, backgrounds, equipment, and other customization options that you can choose from. Many of the rules in Part 1 rely on material in Parts 2 and 3. If you come across a game concept in Part 1 that you don't understand, consult the book's index. Part 2, chapters 7 to 9. Details of rules on how to play the game beyond the basics described in this introduction. That part covers the kinds of die rolls you'll make to determine the success or failure of the attacks your character attempts, and describes the 3 broad categories of activity of the game: exploration, interaction, and combat. Part 3, chapters 10 to 11. It's all about magic. It covers the nature of magic in the worlds of D&D and the rules for spellcasting, and the huge variety of spells available on magic using characters and monsters in the game. How to play. The play of the Dungeons & Dragons game unfolds according to this basic pattern. The DM describes the environment. The DM tells the players where the adventurers are and what's around them, presenting the basic scope of options that present themselves, how many doors lead out of a room, what's on the table, who's in the tavern, and so on. 2. The players describe what they want to do. Sometimes one player speaks for the whole party, saying, "We'll take the east door," for example. Other times, different adventurers do different things. One adventurer might search a treasure chest while the second examines a historic symbol engraved on a wall, and a third keeps watch out for monsters. The players don't need to take turns, but the DM listens to every player and decides how to resolve these actions. Sometimes, resolving a task is easy. If an adventurer wants to walk across a room and open a door, the DM might just say that door opens and describe what lies beyond, but the door might be locked, or the floor might hide a deadly trap, or some other circumstance. Where was I? Or some other circumstance might make it challenging for an adventurer to complete a task. In those cases, the DM decides what happens, often relying on the roll of the dice to determine the results of an action. 3. The DM narrates the results of the adventurer's actions. Describing the results often leads to another decision point, which brings the flow of the game right back to step 1. This pattern holds whether the adventurers are cautiously exploring the ruin, talking to a deceivious prince, or locked in a mortal combat against a mighty dragon. In certain situations, particularly combat, the action is more structured and the players and DM do not take turns choosing and resolving actions, but most of the time the play is fluid and flexible, adapted to the circumstances of the adventure. Often the action of an adventure takes place in the imagination of the players and DM, relying on the DM's verbal descriptions to set the scene. Some DMs like to use art, music, or recorded sound effects to help set the mood, and many players and DMs alike adopt different voices for the various adventures, monsters, and other characters they play in the game. Sometimes a DM might lay out a map and use tokens or miniature figures to represent each creature involved in the scene to help the players keep track of where everyone is. Game dice. The game uses polyhedral dice with different numbers of sides. You can find dice like these in game stores and many bookstores. In these rules, the different dice are referred to by the letter D following by the number of sides. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20, for example. For instance, a D6 is a 6-sided die, the typical cube that many games use. Percentile dice, or D100, work a little differently. You generate a number between 1 and 100 by rolling 2 different 10-sided dice numbered from 0 to 9. One die, designated before you roll, gives the 10 digit, and the other gives the 1's digit. If you roll a 7 and a 1, for example, the number rolled is 71. 2 zeros represent 100. Some 10-sided dice are numbered in tens, 0, 10, 20, and so on, making it easier to distinguish the 10's digit from the 1's digit. In this case, a roll of 70 and 1 is 71, and 0 and 0 is 71, and 0 and 0 is 100. When you need to roll dice, the rules tell you how many dice to roll of a certain type, as well as what modifiers to add. For example, 3d8 plus 5s mean you roll 3 8-sided dice, add them all together, and add 5 to the total. The same D notation appears in the expressions 1d3 and 1d4. To simulate the roll of a 1d3, roll a d6 and divide the number rolled by 2, round up, to simulate the roll of a 1d2. Roll any die and assign 1 or 2 to the roll depending on whether or not it was odd or even. Alternatively, if the number rolled is more than half the number of the sides of the die, it's a 2. That's words. The d20. Does adventurer's sword swing, hurt a dragon, or just bounce up right off the dragon's iron-hard scales? Will the ogre believe it's an outrageous bluff? Can a character swim across a raging river? Can a character avoid the main blast of a fireball, or does he take the full damage from the blaze? In cases where the outcome of an action is uncertain, the Dungeons & Dragons game relies on rolls of 20-sided die. A d20 to determine a success or failure. Every character and monster in the game has capabilities defined by 6 ability scores. The abilities are charisma. The abilities are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. They typically range from 3 to 18 for most characters. Monsters might have scores low as 1, or as high as 30. These ability scores and the ability modifiers derived from them are the basis for almost every d20 roll that a player makes on a character's or monster's behalf. Ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws are the 3 main kinds of d20 rolls, forming core rules of the game. All 3 follow these simple steps. Roll the die and add a modifier. Roll a d20 and the relevant modifier. This is typically the modifier derived with one of 6 ability scores, and it sometimes includes a proficiency bonus to reflect a character's particular skill. See Chapter 1 on each ability and how to determine an ability's modifier. 2. Applies circumstantial bonuses and penalties. A class feature, a spell, a particular circumstance, or some other effect might give a bonus or penalty to check. 3. Compare the total to a target number. If the total equals or exceeds the target number, the ability check, attack roll, or saving throw is a success. Otherwise, a failure. The DM is usually the one who determines target numbers and tells players whether the ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws succeed or fail. The target number for an ability check is a saving throw called a difficulty class, DC, as opposed to Marvel. No, I'm kidding. There's a thing called Marvel. Maybe. It might be. Like Marvel the Dragon or something. It's like a magic spell. Difficulty class, DC. And the target number on an attack roll is called an armor class, AC. Air conditioning. No, it's armor class. This simple rule governs the resolution of most attacks in D&D. Chapter 7, using ability scores, provides more detailed rules for using the D20 in the game. Advantages and disadvantages. Sometimes an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw is modified by special situations called advantage and disadvantage. Advantage reflects the positive circumstances surrounding a D20 roll, while disadvantage reflects the opposite. When you have either an advantage or disadvantage, you roll a second D20 when you make the roll. Use higher of the two rolls when you have an advantage. For example, use the lower roll if you have a disadvantage. For example, if you have a disadvantage and a roll is 17, you use a 5, you use the 5. If you instead have an advantage and roll those numbers, use the 17. For more detailed rules, and advantage and disadvantage are presented in Chapter 7. Specific beats general. Yeah, specific beats general. I wonder what this is about. I haven't read this whole thing. I've read like what have I read? Don't worry, I was on like the 5th page. I've read the races, classes. I've read a bit of personality and background. Anyway. This book contains rules, specifically in parts 2 and 3, that govern how the game plays. That add many racial traits, class features, spells, magic items, monster abilities, and other game elements break the general rules in some way, creating an exception to how the rest of the game works. Remember this. If a specific rule contradicts a general rule, the specific rule wins. Exceptions to the rules are often minor. For instance, many adventurers don't have proficiency with longbows, but every wood elf does because of a racial trait. That trait creates a minor exception in the game. Other examples of rule breaking are more conspicuous. For instance, an adventurer can't normally pass through walls, but some spells make that possible. Magic accounts for most of the major exceptions to the rules. Round down. There is one more general rule that you need to know at the outset. When you divide a number in the game, round down if you end up with a fraction, even if the fraction is 1/2 or greater. Adventures. The Justice Dragon game consists of a group of characters embarking on an adventure that the Dungeon Master presents to them. Each character brings a particular capabilities to the adventure in the form of ability scores and skills, class features, racial traits, equipment, and magic items. Excuse me. Every character is different, with various strengths and weaknesses, so the best party of adventurers is one in which the characters complement each other and cover the weaknesses of I might as well update Razer Synapse. Update all. Okay, I think it's updating. Oh, it froze. Oh, it's back. Okay. Their companions. The adventurers must cooperate to successfully complete the adventure. The adventure is the heart of the game, a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. An adventure might be created by the Dungeon Master or purchased off the shelf, tweaked and modified to suit the DM's needs and desires. In either case, an adventure features a fantastic setting, whether it's an underground dragon, a crumbling castle, a stretch of wilderness, or a bustling city. It features a rich cast of characters, the adventurers created and played by the other characters at the table, as well as non-player characters, NPCs. Those characters might be patrons, allies, enemies, hirelings, or just background extras in an adventure. Often, one of the NPCs is a villain whose agenda drives much of an adventure's action. Over the course of their adventures, the characters are confronted by a variety of creatures, objects, and situations that they must deal with in some way. Sometimes the adventurers and other creatures might do their best to kill or capture each other in combat. At other times, the adventurers might walk into another creature, or even a magical object with a goal in mind. And often, the adventurers must spend time trying to solve a puzzle, bypass an obstacle, finding something hidden, or unravel the current situation. Meanwhile, the adventurers explore the world, making decisions about which way to travel and what they'll do next. Adventures vary in length and complexity. A short adventure might present only a few challenges, and it might take no more than a single game session to complete. A long adventure can involve hundreds of combats, interactions, and other challenges, and take dozens of sessions to play through, stretching over weeks or months of real time. Usually, the end of an adventure is marked by the adventurers heading back to the civilization to rest or enjoy the spoils of their labors. But that's not the end of the story. You can think of it. Is it raining? That's from my parents' show. But that's not the end of the story. You can think of an adventure as a single episode of a TV series, made up of multiple excited scenes. A campaign is a whole new series, a string of adventures joined together with a My sparkling water is very bubbly. A string of adventures joined together, with a consistent group of adventurers following the narrative from start to finish. The three pillars of adventure. Adventurers can try to do anything their players can imagine, but it will be helpful to talk about their activities in three broad categories: exploration, social interaction, and combat. Exploration includes both the characters' movement through the world and their interaction with objects and situations that require their attention. Exploration is the give and take of the players describing what they want their characters to do, and the dungeon master telling the players what happens as a result. On a large scale, they might involve the characters on spending a day crossing a rolling plain or an hour making their way through caverns underground. On the smaller scale, it could mean one character pulling a lever in a dungeon room to see what happens. I'm sorry. Quick intermission, everybody. Oh my gosh. We're almost gonna be back to the book. Just give me 1 second. Somebody's doing a thing. Come on. You can do it. No. Where was I? Oh. Social interaction features the adventurers talking to someone or something else. It might mean demanding that a captured scout reveal the secret entrance to the Goblin Lair, getting information from a rescued prisoner, pleading mercy from an orc chieftain, or persuading a talkative magic mirror to show a distant location to the adventurers. Rules in Part 2, especially Chapter 7 and 8, support exploration and social interaction, as do many classes features and personality traits in Part 1. Combat, the focus of Chapter 9, involves the characters and other creatures swinging weapons, casting spells, casting spells, maneuvering for position, and so on, all in an effort to try and defeat their opponents. Whether it means killing every enemy, taking captives, or forcing a rout, combat is the most structured element of a D&D section, with its characters taking turns to make sure everybody gets a chance to act. Even in the context of a pitched battle, there's still plenty of opportunity for adventurers to attempt the wacky stunts like surfing down a flight of stairs on a shield, to examine the environment, perhaps by pulling a mysterious lever, and to interact with other creatures, including allies, enemies, and neutral parties. The wonders of magic. Few D&D adventures end without something magical happening. Whether helpful or harmful, the magic appears frequently in the life of adventure and is a focus of Part 3. In the worlds of Dungeons & Dragons, the practitioners of magic are rare, set apart from the masses of people by their extraordinary talent. Common folk might see evidence of magic on a regular basis, but it's usually minor. A fantastic monster, visibly answered prayer, a wizard walking through the streets with an animated shield guardian as a bodyguard. For adventurers, though, magic is the key to their survival. Without the healing magic of clerics and paladins, adventurers would quickly succumb to their wounds. Without the uplifting magical support of bards and clerics, the warriors might be overwhelmed by powerful foes. Without the sheer magical power and versatility of wizards and druids, every threat would be magnified tenfold. Magic is also a favorite tool of villains. Many adventures are driven by the machinations of spellcasters who are hell-bent on making magic for some ill end. A cult leader seeks to awaken a god who slumbers underneath the sea. A hag kidnaps youths to magically drain them of their vigor. A mad wizard labors to invest an army of automatons with a facsimile smile. A dragon begins a mystical ritual to rise up as a god of destruction. These are just a few magical threats that that adventurers might face. With magic of their own, the form of spells and magic items, the adventurers will prevail. Here. Today, we're going to be talking... I'm not sure what we're going to be talking about. Actually, I do know. So I was working on some science stuff after school, just at school, because I wanted to get my work done, and I don't have a very good grade in science. And so he needed to leave, and so I went to the library to be all like, hey. He told me to go to the library to do my work, because he can attend in his classroom. Of course, and so I went over to the library. It was a bit louder, as the library shouldn't be, but they're middle schoolers. What can you do? I'm a middle schooler too, not as if I'm better than them. But there were the usual kids. But one of them was like a chess group. One of my friends was he was nice. Also another is like kind of my friend. One of them is watching the video, so. Who knows what you are out of those two. But they were playing chess, and they're like, how could anybody not know chess? Oh my god, it's so easy. And like, I don't know chess. Like, I want to learn, so I might at some point. But the thing is just like, I just never learned, and that's why I don't know chess. I don't understand how that is hard to understand for pro chess players, but who knows. Also, if you couldn't tell, this has kind of been like a background part of the video. I've recently gotten my brand new player's handbook for Dungeons & Dragons. So you know, it's pretty cool. I really like this back part of the book. It's like glossy here, but it's like, you can probably hear it. It's like matte here, but it's like glossy here. It's really cool. Alright, see ya.